interest of time, I had a couple slides in here showing that unemployment doesn't drive defaults, it's negative equity. And if you have negative equity and then you pile unemployment on top of it, you increase the propensity to default because unemployment acts as a trigger, but it's not unemployment alone that causes default. Because when you have unemployment and positive equity, unemployment doesn't seem to matter at all. And I can discuss this during the question and answer session. I'm going to skip the next slide as well. So one huge set of problems in the market is the number of borrowers that are not paying their mortgage, plus the guys who are seriously underwater. The second problem in the market is the credit availability issue. Because basically you've sort of got to, in order to solve this mortgage crisis, if you will, you've got to do two things. First, you've got to fix the supply side, that is, have a successful modification program. Second, you have to fix the demand side. That is, if we're going to somehow absorb, call it 8 million units out of 12 million units over the next, say, 5 years, the question is, where does the demand for these units come from? You've pulled forward a lot of demand for housing. In addition, credit availability, I'm going to make you a case, is very, very tight. Everything outside of FHA space. So the question is, how do you solve the demand side? And thirdly, a guy that defaulted on his house, walked away from his house last week because he couldn't afford to be in that house, is not going to be able to get a mortgage for another house that he can't afford. So, you know, you've limited your buyer base and you've pulled forward a lot of demand. So the question is, so I'd like to sort of talk briefly about the credit availability to the mortgage market. If you look at this slide, which I realize is a candidate for too many numbers on a single slide, page 17. Look at that total, that first column, that middle column called total agency. You'll notice from 1995 to 2003, the agency share of the mortgage market ranged between 75 and 85%. It dropped to 54% in 2004 and 44% in 2005 and 2006. The drop in the agency share from 78% in 2003 to 44% in 2006 was of course mirrored by a rise in the Alt-A share from 3% to 18% and a rise in the subprime share from 7% to 22%. In 2007, one by one, the markets began to shut. The subprime market shut in the first quarter with its share dropping to 16.5%. The Alt-A market began to shut in the third quarter of 2007. The jumbo market at the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. The result, by the end of 2007, we were largely an agency market. In 2008, 94% of the issuance in the first half, 98 to 99% of the issuance in the second half was in agencies. 2009 looks a lot like 2008, with 97% of total issuance in the agency market. And furthermore, you'll notice that what isn't in agencies is not in Alt-A, jumbo, or subprime either. It's in this category called other. Other is re-securitizations of existing deals. It's not the extension of new credit. 2010 is looking a lot like 2009, with basically 97% of total production in agencies. So you basically right now have no securitized market for Alt-A, jumbo, or subprime mortgages. Actually, it was kind of interesting. The deals that have been done thus far have all been re-securitizations of existing deals or loans purchased below par that are already on someone's balance sheet. The Redwood deal that is out in the last day or two is the first new issue the first securitization using newly originated loans that we've seen in a couple of years. And even that, the economics are fairly marginal on. So there's been very little credit extension.
This June 2008 subprime deal?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, the April, what?
June 2008 subprime?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
That's the Goldman deal?
that may have been the Goldman deal, the April 2009, prime jumbo deal with some loans off of Bank of America's balance sheet. I don't know what the 2008 deal was. Page 18, now obviously what securitized loan does not determine credit availability, it's what's originated. But there's been very little originated that can't be securitized. If you look at this the column labeled prime jumbo, you see estimated originations in 2009 were about $92 billion. The last row on page 18, the middle column, which is about the same as the $97 billion in 2008. Compare that to $480 billion in 2006, $570 billion in 2005, $515 billion in 2004, $650 billion in 2003. Now, obviously, prime jumbo origination should be down for two reasons. First, the agencies have increased their loan limits, so they're taking in some of what was formerly private label. In addition, prices have come down substantially, so more and more of the mortgages are fitting into conforming space. Nonetheless, this type of drop is really dramatic. And what it says is not these loans aren't being securitized, but they're basically not being originated either. And the net result of this is on page 19. Months supply of existing homes, 41 months of high-end inventory, homes over 750K. Compare that to about an 8-month supply of all homes. So when you don't have the extension of credit, you have a huge overhang. And even within the conforming space, credit availability is very, very limited. The left-hand side of this slide shows you what we call Freddie Mac low credit issuance. This is the percent of total Freddie issuance the blue line is purchase loans with FICOs less than 700 and LTVs greater than 80. The word low credit is my definition, not Freddie's. So you can see that purchase loans, FICO less than 700 and LTV greater than 80, was about 4% of issuance sort of 2006 and earlier. In 2007, as the non-agency markets began to shut, Freddie and Fannie held their credit standards constant, and loans kept on pouring in. At the peak, about 12% of Freddie's new issuance was for purchase loans, FICO less than 700 and LTV greater than 80, because they were the only open channel of origination. At that point, both Freddie and Fannie's numbers would have been even higher than Freddie's, because Fannie's guaranteed book of business is less good than Freddie's. At that point, sort of mid-2007, Freddie and Fannie basically said, gee, we're gaining market share like crazy, but every one of these risk-layered loans is being taken on our books at a loss. We're going to narrow our credit box. We're going to introduce loan-level pricing adjustments. The mortgage insurers followed suit, and the result was the share of low credit issuance dropped to less than 1% by mid-2009. It's now up to about 2%, but still very, very low by historical standards. So the only place where someone who doesn't have absolutely pristine credit can get a mortgage is actually FHA. And you can see the FHA share, or the Ginnie Mae share of purchases is about 50% at this point in time. And we know what's happened to FHA delinquency rates through time. So you have a situation where Freddie and Fannie's underwriting box is very, very tight. A lot of FHA's is way, way too loose, which is resulting in incredibly high delinquencies, and you have a lot of borrowers falling through the cracks. So credit availability is a huge problem, and the net result of that is the purchase index is reasonably close to a 10-year low at this point in time. So, So the second issue is credit